Well, hello and welcome to a 50th anniversary celebration of Silk Degrees by Boz Scaggs, the album that finally launched them into mainstream popularity and had a pretty significant part to play in the development of a wee band called Toto. So today it's a random foreplay where I'm going to throw the album on shuffle, talk about it in depth, and select 4 songs along the way for us to hear and talk about. So whether you're a long-time fan or merely Boz curious, come on in and we'll find out which exact degrees of silk we're going to land on today. Hey, I'm JSB, and I am a long-term Boz fan, going right back to 1988, when I was 8 years old, and he put out what was kind of a comeback album, Other Roads. He had been out of action for most of the 80s, just looking after his kids as they were growing up post his divorce, and hadn't released anything since 1980. And that album is kind of a modest success in America, but it did pretty decently in my native New Zealand, and especially the single Heart of Mine was getting quite a bit of airplay, and we picked up that album. I say we, it was my mum who bought it, and my love affair with Boz started then and hasn't ended, really, although his recent output has been disappointing for a reason I'll probably get into at some point during the course of this episode. Anyway, as I mentioned as well, this is the album that famously launched Toto as a going concern as a band. You've got across this album Toto founders Jeff Porcaro on drums and David Paich on keyboards, along with the other founding member David Hungate on bass. And of course, a good chunk of the songs on this album were co-written by David Paich, who would of course become the main songwriter in Toto for well, ever since, basically. Boz introduced me to the members of that band, and I soon saw that they were on so many albums by so many people that I already liked, and then I found out that they had their own band, and my mind was blown, and it still is. Anyway, yeah. So the format for this is my traditional random foreplay, which simply means throwing the album on shuffle and selecting tracks along the way out of a kind of best of 3. Because there's 10 tracks on this album, I'm going to let the gods of randomness select our first one completely blind, and then after there I'll select one out of every 3 options that gets thrown my way in whatever order they come up. And there's a lot of great tunes here. We're not going to hear all the great ones because, well, yeah, there's no duffers here. There's one track on here that is definitely my least favorite, but even that's good. And you've got the mega hits, of course, Lowdown, Lido, Shuffle, the original version of We're All Alone, and the smaller hits, depending on where in the world you were, What Can I Say, and It's Over. And then there's some great deep cuts as well. So let's dive in and find out where we're going to start on our Boz journey. All right, let's find out what will our first track be. All right, we are going to start at the end. I'll rewind that to play it in full. It is, of course, We're All Alone, which is the album closer. Does appear on a lot of Boz's compilations, but wasn't actually a single for him. It was a top 10 hit for Rita Coolidge the following year, which is 1977. But I think Boz's version is the best. It's probably only about my 8th or 9th favorite on this album, though, so that tells you what we're in store for after this. Speaking of the music, there will be a separate link to a longer video where the songs I play you can hear along with me in full. If you just want to hear me chatting about them, stay here and just hear little snippets either side. And if you can't find the link, which will either be in the description or maybe a pinned comment, Mum, you can just email me and I'll let you know. Okay, great. So let's kick off with We're All Alone. So that is the end of the album, and if I recall correctly, it's the only song on the album that actually has a proper ending. Everything else is a fade out, which is bad news for me, but it's the only black mark against any of the songs on the rest of this release. Yeah, again, like I say, that's a brilliant song. Not one of my favorites from the album particularly, but it's one that the ladies like. So you're welcome. But really, what a great vocal from Boz on this. By this point, he was only singing because he's a pretty decent guitarist in his own right, but he decided to hand over the guitar duties think of the album before, which was Slow Dancer, and continued through on this one, where he left that to other people and just concentrated on the singing. And yeah, well, that paid off in dividends. Lovely piano arrangement from David Paich, and the strings as well, as it's from no decade other than the 70s, but that's fine by me. Just having a look, I see that Frankie Valli was actually the first person to put this out as a single, but it only did very, I was going to say middlingly, but it did worse than that, something like 78. But then, of course, Rita made it into a bona fide hit in 77. Yeah, and Boz has said that one took a long time. There's some songs on this album that pretty much wrote themselves, but he said that this song was very, very difficult for me to write and came about after years and years of poking around at it, and it just finally emerged. So there you go. You can never tell when an idea is going to come to fruition. Got to keep persevering. All right. So, good start at the end of our random selection of 4 songs, but from now it's going to get harder for me, at least, because I had to choose them. And I'm going to have 3 options each time, and no 2 ways about it, at least on one of those occasions, if not all 3. I'm going to have favourites pairing off against each other, but I can't choose both. I can only choose one from each set. So what's going to fall by the wayside and what am I going to highlight? Only one way to find out. Let's see what my first batch of 3 options looks like for our second track of the day. So I've got another great David Paich intro, Jump Street, option 2, album opener, What Can I Say, or the album's first single, It's Over. All right. Well, I said that I had a least favourite song on this album, and that is in this batch. That is Jump Street. It's fine, and it rocks. It's a different kind of style to most of the rest of the album. Some great slide guitar on it from Les Dudek. But yeah, overall, it's down there. The other 2, however, I like an awful lot. So we've got, as I said, the first single from the album, It's Over, which scraped the top 40 in America, number 38. But, by Boz standards, that was colossal at the time. He didn't know how much bigger the album was going to get after that. But he'd never had a single even get the top 60 before. And album-wise, Slow Dancer, the album before this, had reached number 81, which was at this point his commercial best. So you can see he'd been around for a long time, having very, very middling commercial success, but had a decent, pretty dedicated cult following. So it was just waiting for the right time and album to make him explode, which this did. So that's an option, or as I say, the album opener, which is What Can I Say? Another single, 42 in the US, but number 10 in the UK, his biggest ever single on this side of the pond where I am now, and also a number 2 hit in Australia. Now, another interesting thing is that these days, both of these tracks are credited as being co-writes with David Paich. But on the original album, and indeed the original single, it's listed as a Boz solo tune. It's Over, I mean. What Can I Say is definitely a collab. So I don't know at what point that changed or why it wasn't credited to both of them in the first place. But yeah, I think I'm going to lean that way. Sorry, what can I say? It's a great opener, and we could have gone from closer to opener, but let's hear that first single and see if it should have been even bigger than it was. Or just bigger than it was, really, because it wasn't exactly big in the first place. Great song, though. It's over, but it's only just starting now. Yeah, there's one of the fade outs I was talking about, but it is over. And yeah, I feel that should have been a bigger hit, don't you? I think it's catchy as all hell. The call and response vocals between Boz and the backing vocalists. Just Maxine Green is listed there, but it definitely sounds like more than one person. Either way, all the vocals are great. You've got some very H-esque keyboards and even a bit of harpsichord in the mix, apparently. And of course, Jeff on the drums is magnificent as ever. And that's the interesting thing with Toto is that, let's address the elephant in the room about Toto, which is that everyone says, oh, they were session players and they all got together after meeting in the studio, blah, blah, blah. Not really. Jeff and Dave had been playing together for years before this. I mean, they're only in their early 20s at this point, but they'd been playing in high school together. David Hungate, on the other hand, was a bit older than them and a pro musician that they met on the circuit and through their parental connections. But it was all a lot more organic than people like to make out. Anyway, that's a story for another day for the most part. But the story for today is finding out where to go next. No, in fact, let's talk a little bit more about how these musicians came together and how it all fell together for Boz, because it's quite an intricate, layered story, and any one of these things couldn't have happened. The whole thing would have been non-existent, because the producer of this album is Joe Wizard, if that's how you say it. That's how I've always said it, but I might have been saying it wrong for 40 years, close to. And he had produced 3 albums by Helen Reddy, of all people. Okay, the last of which he had Jeff Porcaro come in and do a couple of songs on, and Jeff, being Jeff, brought in David Paich with him. And Joe subsequently, when talking to Boz about producing him, mentioned particularly Jeff as someone he should be considering working with. Boz was producing an album by Les Dudek, who played the slide on Jump Street that we just skipped, and did bring Jeff in, and Jeff brought in Dave, and yeah, they decided that they'd write some tunes together, and became the basis of this album. So just imagine if Jeff had been snobby and said, Helen Reddy, I'm not going to play on an album by her. None of that would have come to pass. So very much in my own life, there's no such thing as a job not worth taking. You'll meet someone or learn something. You just can't say no to stuff for stupid reasons, is what I'm saying. And thank God they didn't. All right. Now, let us head to track 3. And that was a fairly hard decision. I have a feeling that these next couple might be harder still, but we'll see which way the songs fall and which of the hard choices have to be made. So, on that note, are we going to hear Lowdown? Or might we instead hear the side closer of side 1, which was Harbour Lights? It's very quiet interest. I didn't hear much of that. Or Lido Shuffle. Well, I'll say this. Harbour Lights is a fantastic track. It's one that probably took a quite long time to grow on me. I mean, I was quite young when I first heard it, and it's a long, slow build, and it picks up gradually, tells a great story, some great musical changes, culminating in a fabulous flugelhorn solo by Chuck Finley. But it's impossible to ignore Lowdown and Lido Shuffle. As it is, I'm only going to be able to take us through one of those classic tunes. And, looking at Spotify, these both have about 120 million streams, which is decent, but these should be billion stream songs. And Boz hasn't even got 2 million monthly listeners. I mean, that is wrong. It's just, yeah, no other word for it, really. So, Lowdown, of course, was the big breakthrough single from this album. We reached number 3 in the US and came quite organically. It's one of those songs that got picked up by radio before it was even released as a single, and the response to it inevitably led to its single release and subsequent Grammy wins, Best R&B Song, which both Boz and Paich were delighted with. Yeah, and it's a classic tune, no 2 ways about it. Lido Shuffle, on the other hand, is, well, It's a Jeff Porcaro shuffle. I mean, what can you say? Maybe you're guessing which way I'm going to go here, and it's closer than I'm making it sound potentially. But it is hard. It is hard, but we're going to go the Lido route. Yes, we are. Decision made. That's done. So let's hear Lido. Whoa, oh, 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 shuffle. That fade always comes way too fast, doesn't it? I could do another round of that chorus, no problem at all. That's the Lido shuffle, ladies and gentlemen, with one of the greatest Jeff Porcaro drum performances of all time, which is not a short list as it is, but hey. Um, so speaking of Jeff, anyone who's a fan of Toto or drumming in general should check out this book. It's about time, Jeff Porcaro, the man and his music by Robin Flans. There's a follow-up as well, which I've got figured about somewhere. But this is the best one, and it goes into quite a bit of detail about the making of this album. So David Paich said in here that Lido Shuffle came from something Scaggs had heard called Magneto and Titanium Man, which is of course a track from the Wings album Venus and Mars, released in '75. And he describes it as kind of a 50s doo-wop thing, which he played on piano. But Paich came from what he calls the Elton John school and immediately wanted to beef it up and make it more rock and roll, so it got harder edged. So he notes that it's Freddie Tackett, or Fred Tackett as he's credited, playing guitar on the track. And of course, he himself is on the Moog synthesizer. Moog. That's the one. Paul McCartney can't say it, so why should I? Anyway, yeah, killer tune, and another big hit. I mean, this is by this point the fourth single from this album, which in '76 is a pretty rare thing, and the second biggest overall, number 11 in the States, 13 in the UK, and as I say, it was paired with What Can I Say in Australia to be a double A side number 2. Yeah, all right, and yeah, it should have way more than 115, 120 million streams. That's all I can tell you. Well, we are getting through it, and we've only got 3 tracks left to choose one from. If you know this album, then you know what they are, and I know what they are, and I know what I'm choosing. This is actually a pretty easy one for me, but I'll go through them and see if you can spot my decision when it comes up. All right. So let's see what order they come up in, first of all. We're going to start with is Love Me Tomorrow, which is just a David Paich solo penned tune. And it's not the one that we're going to hear. Next up is What Do You Want the Girl to Do, which is not written by Paich or Boz. It's an Alan Toussaint. Again, these words I have trouble pronouncing. Alan Toussaint, I'm going to go with. Penned song, originally recorded, or at least previously recorded by Bonnie Raitt. She called it What Do You Want the Boy to Do? Although I don't really see that there was a need to gender flip based on the lyric, but hey. And then it was later recorded by Loud George on his one solo album before he sadly passed. And that's the Thanks I'll Eat It Here album, which of course Jeff and Paich and Fred Tackett are all on as well. And that's a great song. But I'm happy in these days when Boz would do a cover or two per album. But in the last 30 years, Boz has put out about 8 albums, and only one of them isn't a covers album, basically. There's a couple that have 2 or 3 songs that he wrote on them, but mostly covers. And as great a singer as he is, the reason I love Boz is for his songwriting, even if I don't always understand the lyrics, because let's face it, he didn't used to put lyric sheets in his albums, and sometimes his intonation and phrasing sounds great, but actually deciphering the words, like in Lido, just there, I still don't know what half the words are, and it doesn't matter. Anyway, my point is, I love what he brings to the table as a complete artist, and he just, for whatever reason, hasn't been doing that in a long time, sadly. So that leaves us with one more option, which the intro to is this. And that is Georgia. Now, I said earlier on I had a least favorite track. That was Jump Street. Well, I also have a most favorite track, and it's this one, just written by Boz. And yeah, again, some great wry lyrics to this one. Great vocal, catchy as all hell, and a playful nod contained in the lyrics to Georgia on My Mind. See if you can spot that when it comes by. For we are indeed ending with my personal favourite, Georgia. Alrighty. There we go, Georgia. See, it's a great song, isn't it? I mean, more fantastic drumming from Jeff on that, but also the horn section, who I'd love to credit. It's not actually listed specifically who they are, but there's a lot of horn players on, including Jim Horn, Plaz Johnson, Bud Shank, Dick Hyde, others I'm missing. But yeah, the Georgia on My Mind moment. For those who don't know the lyrics, in the first verse it says, "I said Georgia, Georgia, a song of you comes as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pines. But for Boz's Georgia, it wasn't moonlight; they were searchlights. Oh no!" Um, which has always made me laugh, even before I knew the origin of the line. What were they up to? And was she of age? This is questions that we perhaps shouldn't be asking. But yeah, well, killer tune. And on any other album, this would have been the hit. But this was just such a loaded release. And speaking of which, isn't it funny that pretty much all the hits, for the most part, are on side two? Highly unusual stuff, which just goes to show that they probably didn't really know uh, what they had and where. I mean, it flows beautifully as an album from start to finish, which is obviously not what I've done today. But if you flip the sides around, well, there's an argument to say that that perhaps should have been the way it came out, but obviously it didn't affect its popularity. It was number 2 in the States in the charts for 2 years, number 3 in New Zealand, number 1 in Australia, only number 20 in the UK. Come on, UK, but they never really fell in love with Boz like the rest of the world did at this time. And obviously, he really only had 2 other quite big albums before that semi-retirement in the 80s, which is possibly why he's a little bit on the forgotten side these days, unfairly, especially this album. Not just this album, because the follow-up is just as good, really. It's underrated, but it's okay, it's not just as good, but it's close. Down to the Left, great. Middleman, fantastic album. Early 80s, and it sounds like it, but killer songs. And then, as I say, I'm a big fan of the Other Roads album as well, which again sounds like the decade it was recorded in, but who cares? If you like the sound of 80s Boz, it's a good one. And if you've missed it, you should revisit. But that is it for our Degrees of Silk. Do let me know if you've enjoyed it. I mean, if you haven't enjoyed it, you're probably not still here. But I hope you did. And if you agree with my choices along the way, I mean, what would you have done if you had to choose either Lowdown or Lido Shuffle? Would you have gone the same way as me? Let me know. And if you weren't playing by my crazy rules, if you were just going to pick 4 songs from this album to highlight to somebody who was hearing it for the first time, what would those be? And of course, anything else you care to mention is fine too. Yeah. Anyway, as I say, fantastic album. Happy 50th birthday to the Silk. And yeah, a couple of years ago, he put out the Slow Dancer album. And I did an old school random 4-play, which is to say I didn't make any choices at all. I just literally heard whatever 4 songs came up first. So if you want to find out what those were, you can head one side of my head or the other and hear a really underrated great set of tunes from Boz. So I hope to find you there or somewhere else soon. So it is merely thanks for watching today and bye for now. I hope not for long.
It's the end, but the moment has been prepared for.